everyone, this will be a tutorial watercolors for beginners, and today we're going to be using the same art supplies that I recommended to you guys. For this one, I'm going to be using my Hanamulu sketchbook. This is a much larger size that I have, but it's the same sketchbook as the one that I showed you guys in the previous video. Same exact paperweight, just a different size. That way you guys can see a lot better of what I'm doing. This will be a real-time tutorial, but I'm going to be moving angles here and there so you guys have a much better view. But we're going to be using my watercolor palette, this travel brush set, a little rag, and then your sketchbook. And that's it. All you will need, just these 4 materials. And let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do before we start painting is that we're going to pre-mix a few colors. And because we are going to be using a lot of greens, and we want to make sure to mix that color. My yellow is really dirty, but what I have here is that I have my warm yellow right here and then my cool yellow right here anytime that I'm mixing in blues. So that's just how I have my yellow set up. As you can see, my yellow is very muddy, but your guys' is probably nice and clean. But I just want to make sure that I have some water on this, and then I clean my brush just like that, make sure it's all clean, and then I go ahead and squeeze just a little bit so a little bit of water goes through the brush and it's wet again. And then I just go back in, get some blue, and then I go ahead and start mixing. And there I have a very bright green, so I go back again. I just take off any excess paint. I clean my brush, squeezing in the brush so that the brush gets clean with the water. And then I go back in, get some more blue. And then this time I make a darker section over here. So now we have 2 different varieties of green. And then I go ahead and just clean my brush. So what I'm going to do here is just pick up some of this lighter green. We don't need to squeeze the brush anymore. Just need to pick up that color. Then here on this paper, what we're going to do is we're just going to tap. And we want to make these taps have like this unevenness to it. And we want to leave some of that paper showing. So this is what your tree should look like so far. It's a little bit wet, as you can see. And now we want to get this much darker green. Again, we don't want to squeeze our brush. We just want to pick up that color. And because this paper is still a little bit wet, it's the perfect time for us to add that darker green, because now those 2 colors can blend in together and they don't create harsh edges. We want to make soft edges right now. We're being a little bit more precise where we put our paint down. And we want to clean our brush. The next thing that we want to do is pick up some brown. We want to pick up a dark shade of brown. And this brown is looking a little bit too light. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix this Payne's gray. You guys may have a different color. So even though this looks dry and ready for me to go to the next step and paint the branches and the trunk, it is not completely dry. It is still damp. So if I were to add that brown in for the branches, the paint will just bleed and it's not going to create those hard edges that we want for the branch and the trunk. So we still need to wait for it to fully dry, and then we can go in and paint those areas. So now that the paper is completely dry to the touch, what we're going to do is add the trunk and the branches. So here's a little part of the trunk. I think I need more paint, so I'm going to go ahead and grab more paint. Where these branches are popping out. And it looks like they're all over here. Okay, we have that big chunk right there. And then I think we have like another one right here. And then we have a few that are over here. And what we're gonna do next is, as I said, you can make this darker in the beginning. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna darken that up. We're gonna go ahead and work with dry on dry. Wet on dry. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna create a little scene of a bush and a tree. And that is gonna be the next step to our landscape paintings here. And let's go ahead and create that green mixture again together. Just need more water. All right, there we go. So first, yellow. Go ahead and grab your yellow. Grab as much as possible because we're going to create a much larger painting. And grab some blue, again, using only a small corner to create my colors. Again, mixing a much lighter green and darker green. It's okay if they touch, that's completely fine. Wiping away our brush. And again, what did we use for the branch? We used a brown. And a Payne's gray, but in your guys' palette, you guys may have black or something closer to that color. All right, there we have our mixtures. Let's clean our brush really well because we're gonna go ahead and make a real painting this time. Again, with this blue, we wanna make sure to water down that blue because that's what we're gonna start off with. We're gonna do step by step here. What we need to do first is the wet on wet technique for our sky. So go ahead and just paint away. Use a lot of water on your brush, lots and lots of water. We're gonna make a gradient, so the much darker part is going to be the sky, and the lighter part is gonna get lighter. So before we start painting with our color, we need to wet the paper so we can do the wet on wet technique for the sky. And now we go ahead and grab some of that blue, and we start off at the top first. That way when we get closer to the foreground, we don't have as much of that blue peeking out. And I'm gonna go ahead and darken this area a little bit more so that our clouds really show through. Wipe away some of that color. Make a really solid gradient here. All right, now let's go in with our rag and let's tap away the color. Make sure to tap away with a clean area of that rag. And we're creating these clouds up here. All right, and let's go back in up here. Tap, tap, tap. Just like that. Maybe over here just a little bit. Okay. And then going back in with our brush, create a little bit of harder edges near those clouds. Just like that. think we should be good. Let me go ahead, do something like this. Let me tap away a bit over here. There we go. Then I'm going inside the clouds, creating some. I'm gonna come back in with my rag. And there we go. Those are our clouds. Now what we're doing here is just we're waiting for this to dry. Make sure all of it is completely dry, because once we get started, we don't want the trees to blend into the sky. So we have to make sure this is completely dry to the touch. So we're gonna wait here. This one will probably take about 5 minutes or so, so wait about. All right, so now that this is finally dry to the touch, we're gonna go ahead, add some green. That lighter color green, we're gonna need it. So using that lighter color green, we're gonna grab a bunch of that. Let me add some more yellow because I kind of mixed in a little bit too much with that darker green. So make sure we have quite a bit of water on there on that brush. And we're gonna go ahead and tap away. So I'm gonna make this area my focal point because my page is uneven because we did this little tester here. So we're gonna tap away here. We're gonna tap, 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 tap. You will find that this, where our green is much darker than the previous little test, because what we did is that we added the background first. We added that blue color. So it's just gonna make our mixture darker. That is okay. Again, tapping away. Your guys' tree may look different than mine, or may slightly just be a different shape. And that is okay. Yours does not need to look exactly like mine, because that is the point of first starting off with a landscape painting here. So yours does not need to look exactly like mine. Again, making sure we have those little pockets of where the background is peeking through. Little tree over here. And then I think on this side, I'm gonna add maybe a little bush or two. But first, you know what? I'm gonna add a little tree here. A little something. And I'm gonna go all the way down to our vanishing point. This line that we created here, that is called a vanishing point, and this is gonna help us ground our tree. It's gonna create perspective. So I'm gonna go ahead and add this all the way down here. As you can see here, I already ran out of that lighter green, so I'm gonna go ahead and mix some more. And quite a bit of water. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add little bushes here. Again, we're just making this up. None of this I'm using from a reference. Just making it up. I just wanted to add a little bit more green here. But we're just making this up as we go. And then we're going to go in with our darker green. This time, because we were painting the other little bushes, we don't have to wait as long for the paper to dry. So we're going to go in here. As you can see, it dried quite a bit, but it's damp. Page is damp, which is good. That's what we needed. We want it to be damp. We don't want it to be fully wet. So if I were to touch the paper right now, some paint would transfer onto my fingers. I'm just adding more water because this is, so it doesn't create those super hard edges. We don't want that yet. Gonna add that over here. I'm gonna do that to this little bush over here. These bushes are quite dry, so you know what we need to do? We're gonna need to reactivate the paint behind it, which is that yellow. I'll do that in a bit. I'll show you guys how to do that. As you can see, we're creating quite a bit of hard edges here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just clean away that brush, and we're gonna go in with that wet brush, and around the edges, we're just gonna soften that up with that wet brush. And now that our paper is dry to the touch, we're gonna go in with the darker green, and we're gonna create those hard edges for the foliage. This is a bit too much water that we have in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and mix some more paint into it. Again, we're creating those hard edges. So those edges where we want it to be darker are gonna be down here. Anytime when we're adding a darker color for the shadows, we want to make sure we place them correctly in the direction that we want the shadows to be. And we want to make sure we know where our light source is coming from. If we have no idea where our light source is coming from, we're not going to know at all where to place these shadows. So that's really important to know. Where is your light source coming from? Where do you need to place those shadows? And we add some of this darker green to the top, the bottom, because it's going to create the illusion of foliage. Okay, that's good enough. Then we're going to move on to over here. Again, we're only using that tip of the brush, and we're just tapping away, tap, tap, tap. And we're leaving areas of that lighter green to peek through. And the bottom should be the darkest part. Same thing with this. Oh, my little brush kind of changed shape there, but it's okay. Now it looks more like of a flat brush, but it's fine. I can work with it. If you guys have a much newer brush than I do, then your guys' will stay the shape that it is, but my brush is pretty old, so it doesn't have a really pointy tip to it. It's kind of already worn down. Okay, and we're good. I think that's all we need. Before we add our branches and the trunk of each tree, we need to make sure to lay down the foreground. And the reason why I am creating that specific color is because this is like during the summer where the grass is pretty dry. Sorry, I grabbed the wrong color. Where the grass is pretty dry. And I'm just mixing that color over here. That's good. If you wanted to, you could definitely make that color into just having all this area just be green with that lighter color that we created for the trees, and then using those same colors to do the grass. But for me, I'm gonna go ahead and make this a scene where it is the summertime. So I'm just laying down that grass. Depending on what you want to do, you could either use the wet on wet technique or you could use the dry on wet technique. Yeah, I just had to mix some more of that color because I was running out. Yeah, that bush right there kind of got lost, but it's okay. We're going to bring it back. We're going to bring back that little bush right here. And you know what? I think there's a little bit too much paint right here. So what I'm going to do is tap away that paint down here. So we're creating more of a gradient. There we go. I like that better. I'm going to add, squeezing the brush, adding some more water, creating a soft edge over here. And we do have to wait for the ground to dry just a little bit, but not too much. But we're gonna go ahead and come back in using that same color, and it's just naturally going to create, well, it's just naturally going to be darker because of the, we already laid down that first layer of color. Creating shadows, little pockets of shadows here. If your guys' brush has a much pointier point than mine, that you guys can create like these little blades of grass here. I can't really do that. As you can see, like my brush can't create like those really nice blades of grass, but if your guys can, go ahead and add those on the bottom, so you can create perspective and depth to your painting. And what I do is I just use the tip of the brush and I just drag it out really quickly so that it just softens it up. And naturally my brush is running out of paint, so I'm creating like these softer brush strokes here. I'm gonna go ahead and grab more paint. And on the farther I get, these little pockets should be much thinner and not as wide as this first one. This one could be wide because it's like down here. It's not as close to the tree. But when we get closer to this tree, our pockets should be more thinner. Again, we're creating depth here. And that is the reason why we're doing that. Grab more paint. All right, I think we are good. I like it so far. So we're just gonna wait for this to dry completely, and then we can finally add the branches for the tree. And then after that, we're gonna add a few birds here. If you want to make a landscape that is very green here, and you decided to make this whole area just green, then what you could do here is also add like tiny bits of colors of maybe like orange, purples, and reds to create a meadow here, and just add a little bit of flowers there. But again, mine is more of a summer landscape, so the grass is pretty dry. That's what we're doing here. And now that this is finally dried, let's go in and let's create our branch. So we already have that color pre-mixed. Again, we don't want too much water. Hold on, let me go ahead and take away that bit of water there. We don't want too much water in our brush, otherwise we're not going to be able to control the watercolor. So we don't need a lot of water there on our brush. And our brush should be, you know, pointy here. We're going to start with the top right here, and then we're going to go and center this. I don't know what kind of tree this is. I've seen it before, don't know what kind of tree it is, but it exists in the real world. I myself really enjoy painting trees. It's my favorite part. Anytime I'm doing landscape stuff. Can't really control that width on those thinner branches. That's okay. I'm gonna do the best that I can here with what I have. And make this a little bit thicker down here. Okay, and that's good. Looks good to me. Okay. Make those little really thin branches. The further to the edge that you are from the tree, the thinner those branches should be. So just remember that. They shouldn't be too thick when you're painting them. Right here. Again, my brush is not that pointy, so mine are going to be quite thick on the edge there. But your guys' brush is probably newer than mine, so you guys can create that. Sounds pretty good. And there you have it. Let's move on to the next tree. For this tree, our stump is right there. Right there. And for this one, I want quite a bit of branches peeking through. And this is where I could definitely use a much thinner brush, but again, I want to use the tools that I recommended for you guys. I don't want to use different ones because otherwise, you know, it just wouldn't make sense for me to recommend you guys stuff and not use them as well. Oops. Didn't want that there, but it's okay. Doing the best that I can with the brush. You guys' probably looks much nicer than mine. Okay, that's good enough. All right, let's add the final branches to this bush right here. That looks pretty good to me. Maybe we just have a little guy sticking out here. All right, that looks good to me. Now that we have our branches and everything is pretty dry, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create like these little trees out here that are far in the distance, so it doesn't look like super bland basically, and we're creating just depth here. We're just gonna use that dark green over here. We don't want it to be too dark, so we want to wash it out with water, but that same color. And we don't need any details, so that's why we just went straight in with that color. We don't want to go above we don't want to go below the horizon, otherwise it's going to seem like it's closer to us. These little trees back here, we definitely want to make sure we stay on that line when we're creating these little trees. As you can see, even though we use that same dark green, because we thinned it out, now we're creating like this much lighter, this much more transparent green. And what it's doing is that it's helping us create that depth. So in our eyes, we know that there's quite a bit of distance between these trees and these bushes. Kind of want to be random when we're tapping here. We want to create round tops, pointy tops for like pine trees, rounder tops for just oak trees and things like that we would see in nature. I don't really want this to end up like a green, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add a purple. You can use purple if you wanted to, or you could use red or something like a quinacridone rose to create a purple, but we want slightly like a bluish purple color here, kind of like that. So go in and add those shadows. The shadow again going in the same direction as this first one, so we don't need to think about it too much. Look at that. Same thing over here. Right down here. And over here. There we go. We have those shadows. And if you wanted to, you could even add that same shadow to the blades of grass. Like if you wanted to do that, you could add a little bit here. And I think we're good. I think that's all we needed. For this, you could either do blue, or you could do black, you could do a brown, depending on what colors you want the bird to be. I'm gonna do a mixture of that same like stump color and a little bit of blue for the birds. I'm going to add two birds here, one over here and one over here. So I'm gonna add one right here. Hopefully this goes well, because again, I don't have that pointy brush. There we go, right there. And then over here, maybe, you know what, I'll add two little guys right here. I feel like that would be really cute. Go ahead and add two little guys. Don't want it up here, down here. I'm thinking. One of them right here. I like that. Then you know what? Let's have a little guy just right here on the little edge of this tree. Let's just have him right here. Right there. He's about to fly away. There we go. He lives right there. All right, we are finally done. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video and you guys learned more about watercolors. For those of you guys that are beginners, hopefully this was a great introduction to watercolors for you guys, and you guys have a better idea of how to use you guys' palette and tools. Again, you only need these 4 things. Get yourself a sketchbook, a rag, a travel brush, and a palette of 12 colors, and you're good to go. You're ready to start using your watercolors and start painting. For those of you guys that are new to subscribe to this channel, thank you so much for subscribing, and thank you for everyone for watching my videos. If you guys enjoyed this video, you guys can go ahead and like. If you guys want to leave a comment down below, go ahead and do so. Just please make sure to be kind down in the comments, and I will see you guys for next week's video. Bye everyone.